The ship was colder than Zara expected. Colder than the old bunkers on Earth where she was trained. Colder than cryo-sleep. Colder than war. Her breath barely fogged in the artificial atmosphere, but she felt the chill in her bones. Calculated, manufactured discomfort. Everything here was deliberate. She knelt in the center of a display chamber, hands resting calmly on her thighs. Her suit, once military-grade Earth armor, had been stripped and refitted with ornamental markings, bright trims meant to amuse alien onlookers. They paraded her as an exotic curiosity. The loyal predator, the rare human who didn't break under pressure. Beside her sat Fenrir, his low growl reverberating like a subsonic warning. He was massive, shoulder height to Zara even when she stood. Thick black fur, streaked with silver, bristled with latent tension. His eyes, glowing with unnatural sapphire light, scanned the chamber. Where others saw a beast, Zara saw a soldier, a partner. The viewing window hummed open, and a chorus of snickering alien voices spilled in, accompanied by the click of clawed feet on metal. Visitors. Again. Observe the expression, said one voice, nasal and amused. Fascinating mimicry of defiance. They call it loyalty, I believe. Zara didn't react. Fenrir bared his teeth. One of the spectators flinched. Commander Vroth entered behind them, his lean, serpentine frame covered in iridescent armor. He carried himself like a man who'd never been denied anything, and his smile was the sort that belonged to predators without empathy. "Your pet continues to entertain, Commander," said an elder with translucent skin, tapping at a floating tablet. "Especially the beast. Those eyes, genetic enhancements." Earth was full of such bio-trickery, Vroth said, his voice smooth. But this one? Natural loyalty. That's what makes it rare. The creature refuses to be separated. Lethal when provoked. Quite theatrical. Zara tilted her head slightly, locking eyes with Vroth. She didn't speak. She hadn't since her capture 3 months ago. They took her voice, but not her will. "And the human?" the elder asked. Vroth turned toward her, amusement flickering across his face. A relic, remnant of Earth's final hybrid program, before surrender. Part machine, part feral instinct. The scientists called her Zara. A name. Names give comfort. Let them have their delusions. The elder tapped again and moved on. The others followed, murmuring, laughing, betting. As the chamber sealed again, Zara exhaled slowly. Her fingers twitched once. Fenrir nuzzled her shoulder, a quiet reassurance. They were still alive, still together. Later, in the dim blue glow of their shared cell, Zara lay on the cold floor, staring at the pulse light on the ceiling. She traced invisible lines on the steel between them. Fenrir pressed against her side. Though they couldn't speak in words, the neural sync between them whispered comfort. She remembered Earth, the endless drills, the echo of gunfire, the barren craters turned training fields. She'd been raised to obey, to protect, to destroy, if needed. Fenrir had been created alongside her, not as a pet, but as a partner. They were bred in the same lab, fought the same battles, bled under the same orders. When the sky cracked open and the alien ships descended, they didn't flinch. They fought, and they were taken. In her mind, the images blurred. Flames over New Berlin, the fall of the last orbital defense ring. Fenrir's howl as they were dragged into cryo-tanks. Now, they were the prize exhibit in an interstellar zoo. Her fists clenched. The next cycle brought new procedures. New prods. More scans. They attempted to separate them again. Zara felt the pull of sedation against her veins, but her mind stayed sharp. Fenrir snarled, sharp and primal. They jabbed him with electric rods, laughing. Zara's eyes flared. One technician stepped too close. She twisted, dislocating her shoulder to slide from the restraint, and cracked his visor with a headbutt. Red sprayed across the console. Fenrir leapt the moment the charge field dropped. His jaws closed around a guard's leg before backup could respond. Tranquilizers flooded in. Darkness. When Zara woke, her wrists were bound tighter, her body sore from punishment. Vroth stood nearby, smug and unshaken. "You never learn," he said. "But perhaps that's what makes you interesting." He stepped closer, crouching. His breath smelled like ozone and bitter herbs. You protect the beast. It protects you. Admirable. Primitive. He leaned in, but loyalty doesn't save you from being owned. Zara's lips parted, slow and deliberate. Her voice rasped and used for weeks. Then you don't understand what you've caged. He laughed and turned away. That night, the stars outside the viewing window seemed brighter, closer. Fenrir paced restlessly, his ears twitching. Zara watched the shadows shift along the corridor walls, calculating distances, surveillance timing, guard patterns. She noticed the youngest technician hesitated during patrols, his eyes flickering with something like sympathy. She planted the idea there. One look, a breath, a shared glance. Time passed. She waited. They had broken every creature they displayed here, turned every defiant species into complacent pets. But they didn't understand humans, not really. Not the bond between a soldier and their companion. Not the depth of a vow forged in battle, in fire, in blood. One day soon, the locks would fail. The alarms would scream. And then they would learn, far too late, that a chained predator only grows more dangerous. Zara closed her eyes and leaned against Fenrir's warmth. Let them laugh. Let them watch. Let them believe the cage was enough. For now, the air in the holding sector had changed. Zara felt it first, not in sound or sight, but in rhythm. The guards had grown predictable, arrogant. The scientists talked louder, lingered longer. Roth hadn't visited in 3 rotations. The silence wasn't mercy. It was confidence. They believed they had won. That time and sedation had dulled her instincts. That Fenrir was just a beast, no longer a threat. They were wrong. Today, the walls hummed with new frequencies. Surveillance drones skated slower past the enclosure, their infrared sensors blinking erratically. Systems were updating. Vulnerable. Zara sat still, but inside her head, variables raced. Fenrir paced the edges of their space, snout low, breath hot. His neural implants pulsed, faintly in sync with her heartbeat. Neither moved with urgency, but each step, each glance, was part of a rehearsal. They'd practiced this in silence for days, refining the timing down to fractions of seconds. When the youngest technician, Revan, soft-spined and wide-eyed, and alone, Zara knew the cycle had arrived. He walked with deliberate calm, trying to mimic confidence, but the slight tremor in his gloved hands betrayed him. He keyed in the diagnostics, his gaze flicking from the screen to Zara, then to Fenrir. She met his eyes. He swallowed hard. "I shouldn't," he murmured, almost inaudibly. "But I can't unsee what they did, what they're planning." Zara didn't answer. Words would only increase the risk. Instead, she nodded once, slow and precise. Revan tapped a series of commands into his tablet. A moment later, the hum in the floor lessened. He looked up. "You have maybe 3 minutes. That's all I can stall. After that, everything reboots. You'll be locked out. Or dead." He left quickly, pretending nothing happened. As soon as the outer door shut, Zara rose. No hesitation. Fenrir mirrored her. The chamber's electromagnetic restraints flickered. One pulse from Zara's internal implant was enough to override the localized lock. Something they discovered after weeks of exposure to alien tech and Fenrir's refined sensory feedback. She touched the panel, rewired a coil, and the cell door hissed open just enough for her to slip through. They moved as shadows, her leading, Fenrir flanking, down the maintenance shaft, past the recycler vents, into the auxiliary core. Every step calculated, every pause choreographed. Alarms had not yet sounded. They found their first obstacle at the junction. 2 guards, bored and distracted, watching a hologame on a private feed. Zara didn't hesitate. She lunged, snapping the first guard's neck with brutal precision. Fenrir launched at the second, claws sinking into synth armor, jaws tearing. It was quick, clean, efficient. Zara took the key card, accessed the panel, and disabled the camera feeds for Sector 4. Not enough to avoid notice entirely, but enough to buy time. Their next move was a weapons cache. Small, guarded, and necessary. The door required dual biometrics, but Fenrir's claws bypassed the panel housing. Zara's memory filled in the rest. She had studied the system schematics etched across Revan's datapad days ago. Inside, she found a pulse dagger, a shock gauntlet, and a set of thermal disruptor mines, small enough to conceal beneath armor plating. It was a start. Footsteps echoed from the corridor. She froze. 3 guards approached. No time to hide. Zara stepped forward, activating the gauntlet. Electricity flared across her fist. She met the first with a punch that shattered his mask, discharging energy directly into his neural interface. He dropped, convulsing. Fenrir tackled the second, hurling him into the wall. The third reached for his weapon. Too slow. Zara hurled the pulse dagger. It struck true, just beneath the chin, where the armor thinned from movement. The alien gasped once, then collapsed. She retrieved the blade, wiping it clean against the wall. More would come. This was the pivot point. They didn't expect her to escape, much less kill. The zoo was a prison, not a battlefield. The arrogance of their empire had lulled them into underestimating every earthborn creature. Now their mistake would bleed. Zara keyed into the central console. Revan's access code held. She locked down the northern hangar bays and rerouted patrol routes to false alarms on engineering deck. Confusion spread like wildfire through the ship's command net. 10 minutes, she whispered to Fenrir, who responded with a low growl. They moved through the underbelly of the compound, avoiding major passages, until they reached the central exhibit dome. From here, they could breach the ventilation shaft that led to the control bridge. As they entered, they froze. Vroth stood in the center of the dome, flanked by 6 elite guards. He wore no armor, just ceremonial robes that shimmered like oil on water. He smiled when he saw her. "I had a feeling," he said. "You were never going to stay in the cage." Zara didn't respond. Words were meaningless now. "I let the technician help you," Roth continued, circling slowly. "You think he did it out of pity? Out of guilt?" He laughed softly. "He did it because I let him. I wanted to see how far you'd get, how far the myth of human loyalty would stretch." Zara glanced around. No cover, no obvious path to the shaft. "I'm impressed," Roth said. "You killed 8 of mine already. Took weapons. Reached the core dome. All without a spoken word. That takes discipline, rage, and control." He stepped forward. "But here's where it ends." Fenrir crouched low, hackles raised, teeth gleaming. "I could shoot you now," Roth mused. "But where's the lesson in that?" Zara's eyes narrowed. She stepped forward, lifting her gauntlet. "Let me show you what loyalty really costs." The first strike came from her left, one of the guards lunging with a vibro spear. She ducked, turned the momentum, slammed him into the ground. Fenrir launched at another, dragging him down with claws and fury. Chaos erupted. Zara danced through it, shock pulses lighting the air, weapons clashing. She was faster, smarter. She didn't fight like prey. She fought like war. Vroth watched, expression unreadable. He didn't move. Not yet, for guards fell. The last 2 retreated, injured. Zara stood, chest heaving, blood across her gauntlet. Vroth clapped slowly. "You are magnificent," he said, "but you won't escape." Zara met his gaze. "I don't need to escape." She tapped her wrist console. All across the dome, the mind she'd hidden during their movement blinked red. "You needed to understand." Fenrir growled, stepping between her and Vroth. "I wasn't a pet." She activated the sequence. The dome erupted in blinding light. Not a blast, but an EMP burst. Scrambling sensors, blinding optics, frying command channels. When the light faded, Roth staggered back, blinded. His armor system screamed errors. Zara approached, blade in hand. She didn't kill him. She let him live. That was the lesson. As she and Fenrir slipped into the shaft, leaving smoke and sirens behind, she whispered one word into the compound's comms before disabling them entirely. "Run." And somewhere deep in the ship, Revan smiled. The vents were narrow, but Zara moved with the confidence of someone who had memorized every twist and junction. Fenrir followed closely, his body streamlined, fur bristling each time the metallic walls pulsed with distant power surges. Behind them, the compound buzzed like a disturbed hive. Sirens howled, Security teams scrambled and confusion reigned. It was a beautiful kind of chaos, carefully engineered. They emerged into a maintenance crawl space that overlooked the command nexus. A labyrinth of glass, light, and alien interface panels pulsed with blue and green hues. The officers within barked orders in multiple dialects, unaware of the two shadows poised just meters above their heads. Zara's eyes scanned the room. She wasn't looking for targets. She was looking for a pattern. Every command issued, every shift in power distribution across the ship told her one thing. Roth had survived, and now he was invoking emergency protocols. Her window to act was closing. She slid open a small hatch in the vent casing, enough to fit the disruptor node she'd stolen earlier. It clicked into place against the wall, and she primed it with a silent nod to Fenrir. When triggered, it would blind every sensor in the bridge for exactly 12 seconds, just enough for the next move. But before she could drop into command floor, her ear implant pinged. It was a transmission. One word. A code. Protocol V. Zara froze. Her lips parted slightly, the color draining from her face. It was impossible. Protocol V had been a failsafe, something she had encoded into Fenrir systems back on Earth in case a complete behavioral compromise. It was never meant to be accessed remotely, and yet someone had triggered it. She turned to Fenrir, who had stopped moving. His pupils contracted. A faint hum began to radiate from a neural port at the base of his skull. "No," she whispered. "Not now." The failsafe was activating. Fenrir took a step back. "Fun," she said more firmly, reaching out a hand. "Stay with me. Override it." The wolf shuddered, teeth bared, not in aggression, but pain. His mind was fracturing under the strain of synthetic command versus instinctual loyalty. Zara gritted her teeth. Somewhere, someone on the ship had found her failsafe key. They were trying to weaponize him, to force him to turn. She acted quickly, jacking a filament line from her wrist console into the neural port on Fenrir's collar. Raw data streamed across her vision. Lines of code. Command chains. The failsafe was deep and old, written by her own hand, with layers of encryption, now being peeled away by someone who understood her patterns. Whoever it was, they knew her. The connection spike nearly knocked her unconscious, but she held firm, overriding subroutine after subroutine. Each rejection burned her synapses with white-hot pulses. Sweat poured down her face. Fenrir whimpered low in his throat. She bypassed a command queue and injected a core lock, a tethering loop binding Fenrir's cognition to her own vitals. If she died, he would shut down. If he acted against her, he would short out. It was crude, dangerous, but it was enough. The hum ceased. Fenrir blinked, his eyes refocusing. He nudged her hand gently. "You're back," she breathed. They couldn't wait any longer. Whoever had tried to take him wouldn't stop with one attempt. Zara triggered the disruptor. 12 seconds of sensory blackout descended over the bridge. Light dimmed. Screens flickered. Alarms cut off in mid-pulse. She dropped, landing between two officers. She moved like lightning. First one down with a wrist blade to the throat. Second with a sweeping kick that shattered his leg. Fenrir pounced from above, scattering personnel like dry leaves. The bridge captain, a tall insectoid hybrid with crystalline armor, attempted to seal the room. Too late. Zara reached the master control panel and slammed a data spike into the interface. The bridge flooded with scrambling commands, hard-coded overrides, pushing the ship's network into recursive loops. They were no longer passengers. They were in control. But then came the voice. Not through comms. Not from outside. It rang through the room, in a perfect imitation of her own voice. "I taught you better than this, Zara." She froze. From afar into the bridge, a figure stepped forward, lean, tall, wrapped in a simple suit of layered exocloth. His face was familiar. Too familiar. Dr. Cale Morrow, her former mentor, presumed dead. His eyes gleamed with that old calculating fire, the kind that always made her feel both seen and dissected. "You really thought I died in the ether collapse?" he said, smiling. "You underestimate me." Zara tightened her grip on the control spike. "You're behind protocol, V." He nodded, unashamed. I designed it with you, but you never asked who funded the program. She took a step forward. Fenrir growled, muscles tensed. Kale raised a hand. I'm not here to fight you. Not yet. Zara scoffed. You're on their side. I'm on the winning side, he replied coldly. And you just handed me the bridge. Behind her, the control spike's lights turned from blue to red. Override detected. Kale wasn't just bluffing. He'd embedded a parallel system beneath the surface. He now had root access. You used me, she said, voice sharp with betrayal. I refined you, he replied, and now I offer you the truth. He walked closer, slowly. The aliens never saw humans as equals. Pets, curiosities, maybe tools. But I showed them something better. I showed them what we could become with augmentation, with loyalty redefined. And you were the proof. Zara stood still. Her breath came hard. He reached out a hand. Join me. We could rule this ship, this sector. The experiments would end. We'd guide evolution itself. She looked at him, really looked, and she saw the truth, the desperation in his eyes, the need to be worshipped, obeyed, not to free humanity, but to own it. She smiled, and it was not kind. Your biggest mistake, she said, was thinking you control a pack. Then she activated the second spike. An independent loop buried under camouflage code Fenrir had helped her design, unknown to anyone but the two of them. The spike pulsed. Kale's expression shifted from smug to shocked as every system on the bridge collapsed again. This time for good. You taught me well, she said, stepping past him. He lunged. She spun, blade out, slicing across his chest. He fell back, gasping. But she didn't kill him. He was a message. As Zara and Fenrir disappeared into the ship's vent core once more, leaving behind a bridge of broken systems and fractured allegiances, she whispered into the flickering intercom. To anyone watching, this is not your ship anymore. And for the first time in cycles, the stars outside blinked without surveillance. Freedom wasn't given. It was taken. The ship was dying. Not in flames or catastrophic decompression, but in silence. Systems had gone dark across entire decks. Autonomic life support failed in waves, oxygen thinning in unused corridors. The sleek hull, once a monument to alien dominion, now pulsed with residual panic. The hierarchy of control had shattered. What remained was smoke, static, and the weight of unmade choices. Zara moved through the chaos with purpose. She passed panicked technicians dragging crates of neural tech, saw guards abandoning their posts, unable to reach command for orders. They looked at her now with something new, not contempt, not arrogance. Fear. She didn't slow. Fenrir flanked her, his stride fluid and alert. His eyes, though still partly luminous from residual neural link signals, were clear. He had broken the leash. At the edge of the ship's dorsal core was a crucible, a towering spire of code and consciousness where the archive of every captured species was housed. It was the Empire's vault, a place of cataloged biology, memory strands, and simulated obedience. It was here they processed the minds of those they couldn't understand. And it was here she would end it. The entrance was sealed. Zara set a mine at the base, stepped back, and shielded her ears. The blast ripped through the reinforced lock. Fire curled outward like a beast exhaling. Beyond the smoke, the crucible's heart flickered with spectral light, rows upon rows of containment columns, each holding the digitized imprint of a living creature. Some were sleeping, some were trapped mid-scream. She walked past them, jaw clenched. In the center, surrounded by protective glyphs and pulsing defense wards, stood the core matrix, a crystalline column spiraling with pale blue light, the command center of the entire system. Zara. She turned. Kale was there, bleeding from the side, but standing, no longer pretending to lead, just surviving. You're going to destroy it, he said. Yes. Then all of it goes. The languages, the data, the histories of dozens of species. They weren't archived, she replied coldly. They were harvested. You can't save them all, Kale said, voice rising. But with this tech, we could shape a future, prevent another empire from rising. Zara stared at him. You built this for them. You made it easy to forget what they took. You're emotional. No, she said. I'm human. She raised a final spike in her hand, the one they didn't know she had. Forged from both alien interface code and raw Earth-made logic, it was incompatible with every system on the ship, and thus capable of tearing it apart. Kale lunged, but Fenrir was faster. The wolf slammed him to ground with bone-snapping force. Not a kill, just enough. Kale would live, broken and bound to his failure. Zara approached the core and placed a spike into the port. At first, nothing happened. Then the light inside began to dim, spiraling in reverse as systems overloaded. She turned and walked out as the crucible collapsed behind her, light fracturing like ice. All across the ship, prisoners stirred. The neural leash networks dissolved. Pain dampeners stopped firing. In the holding chambers, creatures of 100 worlds blinked, finally aware of themselves again. The illusion of dominion had broken. Zara returned to command bridge, or what was left of it. Screens blinked erratically. Vroth had not reappeared. Kale's encrypted transmissions no longer had a node to speak through. Power was failing. She stood at the helm. The star chart shimmered weakly, and for the first time since her capture, Earth's coordinates hovered within reach. It was distant, almost unreachable, but not impossible. She keyed in a course. As the engines rumbled, Fenrir sat beside her, silent and calm. A voice crackled through the internal comms. It was Revan. You did it, he said, breathless. You have control. For now. What happens next? Zara looked out into the void, her expression unreadable. We go home. There was no cheer, no grand proclamation, just motion. One ship, ripped from the spine of an empire, now sailing free into uncertainty. Zara closed her eyes. This wasn't about vengeance anymore. It was about what came after, about unlearning captivity, about waking up again and again until the memory of the leash no longer weighed on their skin. As the stars slid by and the ship moved toward a horizon no longer governed by alien hands, Fenrir curled beside her and rested his head against her boots. And for the first time, in silence and in truth, she allowed herself to breathe, not as property, not as myth, but as the beginning of something no one could cage again.